YouTube, what's going on? Welcome to the Off the Schneid 2020 NFL Preview Series, where I'll be going over all 32 NFL teams, breaking down their rosters, their schedule, giving you a record prediction, as well as helping out with some betting tips. If this is your first time at the channel, do me a massive favor, hit that like and subscribe button, turn on notifications, and check the description for links to social media for Off the Schneid. Follow us on there as well. I want to give a massive shout out to OurLads Scouting Services and OurLads.com for helping me to make these videos. I'm on their website almost daily, and if you're a serious football fan, guys, you need to have this website bookmarked, favorited, whatever it is. Helps me at draft time, fantasy football purposes, when creating bet slips, as well as DFS lineups. It's your one-stop shop for NFL scouting services. There's a link in the description for OurLads.com as well as the social media. Do me a favor again, hit that like and subscribe button. But enough of that. Let's get to your favorite NFL football preview. All right, today we're looking at the 2020 Chicago Bears. Very, very interesting team to me. Extremely interesting. They could win this division, and I don't think they could be last in this division. But I definitely think they could contend. This division was really tough for me to project, to be honest with you. Up and down, top to bottom, I think all four teams have a shot. Let's take a look at the Bears here. We'll start at quarterback as always. You got Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. Obviously, they declined the fifth-year option on Mitch Trubisky, which of course you would do. They would be due to pay him $24.8 million in his fifth-year option. And looking at it right now, of course he's not worth that money. So don't sign him to don't extend that option. Obviously, they go out and sign Nick Foles, 3-year, $24 million contract. But I mean, so obviously Ryan Pace has faced a lot of scrutiny for drafting Mitch Trubisky, which is deserved. But he did a good job at trying to make up for it right here with signing Nick Foles. Basically, you got Nick Foles for this year and next for sure. He's going to be on the team. The cap hit's only 5.3 and 9.3 in 2020 and 2021. After that, you can dead cap, cut him for 6.3, which could be a possibility, or he's just your backup quarterback, which is the more likely scenario in my opinion. So you have an open competition in camp once we get there. They've said that that's what it's going to be, and I think that that's what it will be, and I think that's what you should do, because you're not paying either one of these guys a ton of money, so either one can be your starter or backup, and it's not like the Colts with Jacoby Brissett and Phillip Rivers and now Jacob Eason. So you can just have an open competition, see who wins, and then feel relatively comfortable, about your starter and your backup. More comfortable than they were last year with Trubisky and Chase Daniel. But, I mean, do you really feel super confident in either guy? Yes, they were 8-8. They won the division a couple years ago with Mitch Trubisky. So, and then who's your guy? And then how short is their leash? I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. So with Nick Foles, you could make an argument that this is he's got his most talented receiver in Allen Robinson that he's ever played with. I would put Deshaun Jackson ahead of him for sure, but beyond that, and it's still early in Robinson's career that he could become the most talented receiver by the end of his career that Nick Foles has played with. It's just really interesting. So let's just leave it at that. I mean, Mitch Trubisky had 3,100 yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 picks, ran a couple more touchdowns in on the ground. He does scramble a fair bit. He would definitely be better than Nick Foles in the scramble game. But you could say that Nick Foles is the better leader. So it's hard to project right now. I'm not going to say who. I think that Nick Foles will be the starter. I'll say that. I think that Nick Foles will eventually, if not in the camp battle, he'll get there. He'll end the season as a starter. I'm not sure how many games each guy starts, or if Nick Foles starts all 16. Maybe Mitch Trubisky starts all 16. I particularly think that Nick Foles will start this year at some point for sure. If he starts as the starter without injury, he will finish as the starter, in my opinion. If Trubisky starts as the starter week 1, I think it's only a matter of time before Nick Foles gets in there. So we'll see. It's really hard to project. Either way, I don't think it changes the dynamic of this team a crazy amount, and the record prediction, which we'll get into. I don't think it changes a ton. depending on which quarterback is in. So we'll leave it at that. Then we'll go to running back, Tariq Cohen and David Montgomery. I really like that 1-2 punch, kind of thunder and lightning. Obviously, Tariq Cohen catches way more passes than he gets attempts on the ground. He only had 64 rushing attempts, but he received 104 targets for 79 catches. The only concerning part about his catches is 5.8 average. I'd like to see him, considering his explosiveness and his shiftiness in open space, I'd like to see him add some more yards to his receptions, 3 touchdowns, which is good. But again, a couple more big plays like he had a few years ago, get back to that. But maybe just was an off year. I'm fine with Tariq Cohen, absolutely. David Montgomery really needs to take a step forward, which I fully expect him to do. This will be his second year, and that's kind of the running back, old year 3 for wide receivers. I think year 2 for running backs is either going to be a regression if they had a very good rookie year, or a progression if they had a subpar rookie year, which is what happened with David Montgomery. Similar, look at Joe Mixon. Very similar in my opinion. So I could see over 1,000 yards, pushing 10 touchdowns, similar amount of catches, maybe more in the passing game. We'll see, but I doubt it because he got Tariq Cohen. But over 1,000 yards rushing, pushing 10 touchdowns. And I think, like I said, he progresses. So that's all you really want out of David Montgomery. They just have to be better, and he has to improve on the 3.7 average per rush. Go to tight end, which the Bears and Matt Nagy obviously covet quite a bit. They were really good. Trey Burton was really good there a couple years ago. They went out and signed Jimmy Graham, and then signed Demetrius Harris as well, and then drafted Cole Kmet with their first pick in the second round. I don't mind the pick for Cole Kmet, but a rookie tight ends just don't contribute an absolute ton in their rookie year. They just don't. Look at the numbers; it's pretty rare. But I mean, yeah, you grab Jimmy Graham and you're laughing, and that they should be just fine. And then Cole Kmet is heir apparent type of guy. But I'll get to the draft, but I didn't like their draft at all. I had a hard time with a lot of their picks. I think that they're close enough that they needed to add more impact players right now. And I don't really think that Cole Kmet is that guy. I love the Jalen Johnson pick, which I'll get to, but I think that they're close enough that they are contenders right now. And I think if they added a wide receiver, maybe some additional help on the defensive line, something like that in the draft, but we'll see how it shakes out. Offensive line is pretty good. Nothing wrong with the offensive line. They added some depth as well. Second round pick Jason Spriggs, former second round pick Jason Spriggs, former first round pick Jermaine Ifedi. They added a couple 7th round, dart throws in the draft, which is fine, in Hambright and Simmons. And then they're very much intact for the past, I think, almost 3 years now. This offensive line is pretty intact. And James Daniels is going to he's one of the better guards in the league, in my opinion. If not now, then he will be by the end of this season. And they're just fine. There's nothing wrong with the offensive line. They did allow, I think they were middle of the pack in sacks allowed, maybe bottom 5 in sacks allowed. So they should improve. You really hope that they improve on those numbers. It's more in the running game. They got to get going a little more in the running game. And again, that could come down to David Montgomery, which I said already. I think he takes a step forward, and I think he will be fine. Move over to the wide receiver position. I thought that they needed to add someone in the draft. I really did. And Darnell Mooney is just not that guy for me. I really like Anthony Miller's progression, and I think he takes another step forward this year. They added Ted Ginn as well. I like Javon Wims. They lost Taylor Gabriel, which I think is completely fine. I think that they should have let him walk. I think Anthony Miller can gobble up those targets and receptions and yards and all that stuff, as well as, like I said, Javon Wims. and Cole Kmet to a point, and Jimmy Graham to a point, and even Allen Robinson as well, even though he had 154 targets. You can't throw the ball too many more times to him, to be honest. But I think Anthony Miller can gobble up those targets and receptions and take another step forward. So I think they're okay there, but I would have rathered, instead of maybe I do like the Travis Gibson. I don't know, maybe instead of Kendall Vildor, but they kind of need a corner too. It's tough to say. Like I guess they did what they could with their limited capital, but I just thought their draft could have been better. Move over to the defensive side of the ball. They lost a lot. They lost 3 of their top 4 sack getters last year, and Khalil Mack had an off year as far as that was concerned. He did still contribute a ton, and people might think that Khalil Mack had an off year, and I guess you could say he did, considering how elite he is, with only 8.5 sacks, but he had 13 tackles for loss, 5 forced fumbles. My bigger concern than the sacks would be his tackle numbers. His tackle numbers have fallen in the past 2 seasons in a row by a fair margin. So that's more of a concern to me than his sack numbers. You can say that he didn't really have a ton of help with Akeem Hicks being hurt last year, and he is a huge help. So that to me is more concerning, the tackle numbers than the sack numbers, especially with adding Robert Quinn, and hopefully Akeem Hicks stays healthy all year. It was an arm injury, gross looking broken arm, so it shouldn't be a huge concern about his health coming back. My concerns are that they lost, yes, Nick Williams, Nick Kwiatkowski, Leonard Floyd, Aaron Lynch. All these guys are gone. Prince Amukamara. It's just, for my money, they didn't do enough of a job to replace those guys. They lost HaHa Clinton-Dix. Bringing in Barkevius Mingo. I like Artie Burns, though. They just didn't replace the guys that they lost, especially with Nick Williams. I think that's a massive, massive loss, to be honest. I think that's a huge loss for that defense, and they really don't have anyone to replace them. Eddie Goldman and Bilal Nichols, those guys aren't they can clog up the middle, and that's great. You definitely need that. And they did add Robert Quinn, but they were already in the bottom 10 of the league in sacks at getting after the quarterback. We'll see. I do like, I think they needed, like I said, I think they needed to add someone on the defensive line. They have, as you can see, OurLads has Travis Gibson listed as a defensive end. I have him more as an outside linebacker, pass rusher type of a guy. And I think they needed to add someone on the interior that can help out. Unless Akeem Hicks gets back to 8.5 sacks, Robert Quinn is 10 plus, and Khalil Mack is 10 plus. It could definitely happen. Absolutely, that could happen. But it's tough to just pencil in those stats. For me, it's tough to just pencil that in and call it a day, and then call Bilal Nichols and Eddie Goldman just your run stuffers. It's tough to pencil in those stats, if you ask me. I do like their linebackers. Roquan Smith, I think, is one of the better linebackers in the game right now. And Danny Trevathan is very good when he plays. He does get hurt a lot. He's constantly hurt, but he's a former Super Bowl winner. Tons of experience, great leader. I do like Danny Trevathan a lot, but it's just a matter of if he can stay healthy. Kyle Fuller, I really, really like as a corner. He's fantastic. Artie Burns, I think, is fine. I think he can be complimentary. I think the Steelers might have kind of given up on him a little too early. Jalen Johnson, I think, was by far their best pick in the draft. I think that he'll be great for that defense. Buster Screen is still capable. He can still kind of get the job done. Duke Shelley, I think, was a 3rd round pick for them a couple years ago. Kevin Tolliver is another vet. So I think they're okay, and they were, I think, top 3 or so in passing touchdowns last year, which is a very good stat, which is also something I attribute to the Khalil Mack conversation. So I don't believe Khalil Mack had as much of a down year as people may think. But either way, and then Eddie Jackson is one of the better safeties around. I do really like him. Deion Bush is just fine. They added Tayshaun Gibson, which is, again, just fine. I just would have liked to have seen, a little more of a push on the defensive side, considering what they lost in free agency. And this is a big year for Matt Nagy. And the quarterback position, I'll finish off with going back to quarterback. So Nick Foles, you've committed for 2 years, 100%, even 3, because he's a capable backup either way. So Nick Foles is going to be on this team for 3 years. I would be willing to almost guarantee that happens. Whether he's a starter or not, I'm not sure. If Nick Foles starts this season as the starter, Mitch Trubisky will not be on the Bears next season. He will not. And they will draft somebody. Will it be a first-round pick, second-round pick? I don't know. We'll see. But they will draft a quarterback in next year's draft if Mitch Trubisky does not start games for the Bears. If Mitch Trubisky doesn't start a single game for the Bears this season, he will not be a Bear moving forward. I guarantee that. And Nick Foles will be on this team, I think, for 3 years because his contract just makes sense. If he's your starter and you're winning games and you're winning divisions, you're going to the playoffs, great. That's perfect. He's got a great number and you're just fine with that. But if he's your backup, you're fine with that too. You're absolutely fine with that. His cap hit is only maximum $9.3 million. So you're fine with that as a backup quarterback. That's a perfect price. That's basically what you signed him for. But if he's going to be your starter, then you're very happy. But either way, he's probably going to be that bridge guy because they're going to draft someone. In my opinion, they draft someone next year who's going to be the heir apparent to Nick Foles. That's what I think happens. And he's kind of the bridge quarterback for this 3-year contract. So yeah, there you go. There's the Chicago Bears. I like this team. They were super hard to project. I really wanted to pick them to win the division. I'll tell you right now that I didn't, but I really do like this team. I like them more than other people, I think. I'm not sure. I haven't watched anybody else's stuff. I don't like to do that until I do my own, but I like this team, and I think they're heading the right direction, and they're only a few pieces away. And I do think that they most certainly could be a playoff this playoff team this year. So let's take a look at their schedule and record prediction for 20. All right, so there you go. Low, high, my. They were 8-8 last year, and I maybe 7-9 is a bit on the low side. But if they have issues at quarterback and David Johnson or David Montgomery does not take that step forward, they could fall back. But on the high side, 10-6, I don't see them. I just see them being right there. They'll contend for the division. I think they'll contend to the playoffs, and realistically, I think they have the roster and the team to kind of hang and bang with anyone out there. I really think so. But I just feel like they might come up a bit short in a few games. They're the third most likely, 4.75 to win the division. Again, I didn't pick them to win the division, but I do think that they finish higher than the Vikings and the Lions. So let's take a look through their schedule here. Starting week 1, you got the Detroit Lions on the road, much improved team, divisional game. That's a tough game. I don't expect them to get that win. At home against the Giants, I like that. They should definitely get that win. On the road against Atlanta, I just see a split, in the first 4 games, and then Indianapolis at home. I think that they could definitely get that win. It's a tough game, but I think they should be able to get that win. And then a short week at home against the Bucs, and everybody knows how much improved the Bucs are. They have the best run defense in the game right now. That's a tough game, even at home, especially so early in the year where it's not as cold in Chicago yet. But even if it was, Tom Brady and company, they're pretty okay with playing cold weather games. On the road against Carolina Panthers, I think that they have the firepower. I think they have the team to be able to beat a team like the Panthers, even on the road. Same with the Rams. I think the Rams take a fairly large step back this year, especially with how good the Bears were against the pass last year. I think they might pull back from that a little bit, but I don't think it'll be extreme. And I think the Rams have a tougher time winning games this year. At home against the Saints, I like the Saints in that game. On the road against the Titans, that's a tough game. At home against Minnesota, I like them to definitely beat Minnesota at home. I think they might split because they're playing the Vikings in Minnesota so late in the year, and I think they'll have it figured out by then, the Vikings. But I think they split, so they get this win. Then the bye week on the road against the Packers. If I'm the Bears, I probably would rather have an earlier bye week, if I'm being honest. Just with the way this team is built, I'd rather be, week 6, 7, something like that. Especially just with the uncertainty at quarterback, I'd rather have an earlier bye week. But it is what it is. They have one of the later ones. At Green Bay, that's a tough game. I don't expect them to get that win. I could see them splitting with the Packers as well. We'll see. That's a huge game in week 17, but we'll get there. At home against the Lions, I like them to get that win, split with the Lions. At home against Houston, I like them to get that win. I just think, again, that's another team, the Texans, I think, pull back a little bit. At Minnesota, I think Minnesota will get that win. If it was, say, week 1 instead of at Detroit, if it was at Minnesota, I would like the Bears in that game. But at this point in the season, I think the Vikings can figure it out. I do think that they finish. I have the Vikings finishing last in this division. I do, and I'll probably take a lot of heat for that. But I think that at that point, I think they can beat the Bears. If it was earlier, I would like the Bears, but it is what it is. On the road against Jacksonville, that'll depend on how the Jacksonville Jaguars season's going. I like the Jags this year, but I definitely think that the Bears have a very good chance at winning that game, for sure. And then at home against Green Bay, that's a huge game, and that might decide the division. There's a very good possibility that decides the winner of this division. This, to me, this was the toughest division to project. A very, very, very tough division to project. I had a really hard time with it. Really hard time with projecting records and then the winner. Ultimately, I went with the Packers, but I have the Bears finishing second and being right there. So they very well could win the division at 10-6. If not, I do think that the Bears will get into the playoffs. I do. I think that they can at least be a wild card team, especially with adding another wild card position. I don't think any team from this division contends for that one bye in the playoffs. There's only one now. So I don't think that any team, whoever wins, Packers, Bears, Vikings, Lions, whatever, I don't think any team that wins this division is going to be contending for that bye week. So either way, I think that that's going to be an important game in week 17 for positioning. So yeah, it's interesting. It'll be a really interesting season for the Bears. I think they have all the tools to contend with every team in the NFL. There's a lot of good test games that they have on this schedule. And I think they can, like I have the record, I think they're going to come up short against some really good teams and then beat some teams that they should, or it's a kind of a coin flip. Titans, Rams, Lions, and then splits with the Packers and Texans, like Colts, games like that. They can, as long as they can be, call it 6-4, like an above 500 team against those teams that they should beat, whether it's home or away, Jags, that kind of a thing, then I think that they can scrape into the playoffs. So we'll see, but there you go. There's your breakdown. Let me know what you think in the comments for the 2020 Chicago Bears.